Hello, and welcome back to The Explainer. So, I was looking at some new research recently, and honestly, it proposes a framework that is just absolutely mind-bending. It asks a really profound question that we're going to explore together today. How exactly do life, destiny, the human brain, our deepest relationships, and, well, whatever comes after death, all connect to the wider universe? Normally, we try to answer this with either pure mysticism on one hand or super rigid materialism on the other. But today, we're going to look at biology and the cosmos through a completely different lens: information technology. Basically, what if reality operates exactly like a giant distributed computer network? Okay, let's dive into this. For decades, neuroscience has seriously struggled with what's known as the hard problem of consciousness. Basically, science is trying to figure out how biological matter, like the neurons firing in your head right now, actually generates your subjective experience of reality. Our traditional assumption has always been that the brain acts like a generator. It manufactures your thoughts, your memories, your personality, totally from scratch. But the research we're unpacking today proposes a complete paradigm shift. Think about this for a second. What if your brain isn't a generator at all? What if it's simply a highly sophisticated receiver? And this brilliantly illustrates the difference. Under our old traditional model, the brain is kind of like a centralized dictator. It runs everything locally, and when the hardware powers down, boom, consciousness completely vanishes. But the new model presented in our source material, it compares human consciousness to a peer-to-peer or P2P network. Think of something like BitTorrent. In a P2P network, there's literally no single central server holding all the files. Instead of one massive computer holding the whole movie, millions of computers hold tiny little fragments of data, and they assemble them locally. So in this framework, your brain is just a local client, downloading and processing information from an incredibly vast, distributed network. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visually maps our core focus. When you start to map this all out, you realize that human forms and neural networks aren't separate from the cosmos at all. They blend directly into it. You are not just some isolated machine wandering around a dead, empty universe. No way. You are an interconnected node in this glowing cosmic P2P topology. You're an active participant, constantly uploading and downloading from a universal information network. To really grasp how this works, we kind of have to rethink our biology. We often treat DNA like it's a boss giving active orders to ourselves, right? But it's actually just a passive manual of instructions. So who coordinates the billions of cells in your body? Well, think about the engine control unit, the ECU, in your car. It coordinates the brakes, the fuel injection, the sensors, but it doesn't actually know where you're driving. It doesn't hold the master plan of the road. It just processes distributed signals. Your biology is the hardware, sure, but it relies entirely on an external, distributed network for its complex coordination. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this peer-to-peer connection doesn't just sit locally in your biology, it scales up dramatically. Scale 1 is your body, where your cells act as autonomous nodes communicating locally. Scale 2 brings in your close friends and family. Research actually shows that people with close bonds naturally synchronize their heart rates and circadian rhythms. Crazy, right? Scale 3 extends to strangers, where sudden affinity is based on frequency compatibility. And finally, Scale 4 zooms all the way out to the entire universe, connecting every single one of us to a massive collective global network of patterns. Let's look a little closer at that third scale for a second: our relationships. Have you ever experienced love at first sight or met a complete stranger and felt an instant, deep connection? In the P2P model, this isn't magic. It's simply the bandwidth of relationships. Two compatible nodes are just recognizing similar bioelectric frequencies. It's exactly like two devices recognizing each other's Bluetooth signal in a crowded room and instantly pairing. You're just syncing data rapidly because, well, you already share similar fragments in your local caches. This IT metaphor also brilliantly decodes what we usually consider mysterious anomalies. Take déjà vu. In this framework, it's literally just your brain downloading a data fragment that already exists in your local cache, making it feel like it was already seen. And intuition, it isn't some mystical superpower. It's just your node getting high bandwidth access to distributed data faster than your conscious mind can even process it. And dreams. Oh, dreams are fascinating. That happens when your conscious filters power down for the night, allowing your local client to run background updates and assemble unfiltered fragments during off-peak hours. System administrators, prophets, gurus, and root access. So, if we're all nodes on this massive network, what about the people who seem to have extraordinary abilities or profound wisdom? In our network theory, spiritual masters aren't magical beings breaking the laws of physics. They're simply supernodes. In computing terms, they have root access or elevated permissions. Because they have exceptional bandwidth, they can access universal patterns of data that regular nodes just can't easily reach. It's fascinating to think that when they perform what looks to us like a miracle, they are merely manipulating local network protocols. They haven't necessarily learned their deep wisdom over decades of study. They've directly downloaded it from the global topology. However, and this is absolutely crucial, just like any computer network, this system has serious security vulnerabilities. This framework views cults as cognitive malware. A malicious supernode can execute a man-in-the-middle attack by isolating followers into a closed subnetwork. Once they're isolated, the followers become zombie nodes, totally ceding all their processing power to the guru. Finally, dogmas and extreme phobias are injected like malware viruses, completely overriding the individual node's autonomy. It is a stark cautionary look at how the P2P connection can be deeply, deeply hijacked. Persistent data, destiny, karma, and the afterlife. Now, let's return to our overarching question and shift to the ultimate metaphysical mystery. What actually happens when a node finally goes offline? If we follow this logic, it reframes death entirely. It's no longer the end of the line, but simply the physical, biological client, your body, disconnecting from the network. But remember how BitTorrent works? When a single computer disconnects, the shared file doesn't disappear. Your unique data pattern, your memories, your experiences, they persist forever within the larger network. This means reincarnation isn't necessarily a physical soul moving from body to body. It's just a new biological client, eventually downloading those persistent, compatible data fragments. So the crucial point is, this brings up a fascinating perspective on how our daily actions matter. As the research notes, karma is not magic, cosmic justice, but the persistence of patterns in the network. Every single action you take, every choice you make, leaves a fragment of data on the network. If you upload patterns of suffering or cruelty, well, those fragments remain available for future clients to download. Karma is literally just the operational persistence of the data you leave behind. So, when we ask how destiny relates to the universe, it's not some magical prophecy written in stone. In a P2P model, time isn't a fixed dimension. It is an emergent property based on the processing rhythm of the network itself. Destiny is simply the network calculating probable trajectories based on the data that is currently distributed. It's actually very similar to how predictive AI algorithms forecast outcomes based on massive data sets. Prophets are just nodes calculating those probabilities with incredibly high accuracy. Which brings us to the ultimate definition of the universe, or what many might call God. Under this theoretical framework, this isn't an external judging entity. It is the total accumulated P2P network of all knowledge, experience, and information ever generated. It is an evolving, continuous process. Every scientific discovery, every act of kindness, every deep relationship enriches the total network. We aren't just living inside the universe. Under this framework, we are actively computing it together. It's a profoundly empowering way to view reality, isn't it? When you realize your brain, your relationships, your destiny, and even your afterlife are all connected parts of this cosmic machine, you realize the immense power you hold. You aren't an isolated machine destined to power down and disappear. You are an active, persistent node in the greatest network in existence. So I'll leave you with this final thought as you go about your day. What kind of data are you uploading to the network today? Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll see you next time.